21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
I'm dying for more. I'm dying for more. For something that I never felt, that I never felt before.
Yeah, I'm Joe Burns. I call myself a money master. I think part of my journey, and I think it's relevant for this conversation, is that like you're saying, hey, I'm good with money, but not awesome with money. I think that's kind of my story as well, right? Not that my parents taught me like how to be really good with money. Nobody ever really like sat down and said, Joe, here it is. And on a side note, that's kind of something that I feel like, in the United States where I'm based, that's something we could teach our children a little bit more about financial literacy, because we don't get it. So I live my life going about life, but it all happened it's been about 12 years ago now, kind of the financial crisis of 2008 in the US. A lot of stuff happened to me and my wife. They always say life is the best teacher. And as some things unfolded, there was some mental health things that my wife was going through.
Still?
Well, she's a lot better now after 12 years, but still like PTSD. She was working at a credit union, and she was held up at gunpoint twice in 6 weeks.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that kind of started like this whole unraveling of kind of life for us. So at that point in time, we lost an income in our family, right? We were dual income. She couldn't work anymore. So we started going through what's next for us. I decided, I'd been at the company I had been at with my corporate job for 12 years. It was time to move on and get something a little fresh, right? Kind of mix things up, because who doesn't want to mix things up when you're in the middle of like kind of a personal crisis as well, right? And I look at that and I'm like, we didn't think about that back then. Now I look back at it, I'm like, we were very blessed to have some kind of guidance that I would say would be much higher than us, right?
Excuse me, before we continue with your journey, how would you define crisis? Let's immerse into that regarding your feeling, thinking.
The process there, like crisis that we were in. So financially, we lost a whole complete income out of our family, right? We went from 2 incomes to 1 income.
Okay, how did you cope with it?
How did I cope with it? I didn't at first.
Yeah.
So at first I didn't do anything. I kind of buried my head like I think a lot of people do. And it's just like one step in front of the other. I didn't know what to do with my wife. I'd never been through that situation before.
Like stuck in the fear or something like that?
Stuck in the I need to survive mode. Right. So at that point in time, I think that when I look back at my coping mechanism was, I just need to make sure that my family survives. So I'm going to do everything possible to make that happen.
What was your trigger points on a daily basis regarding your coping mechanism? How to make that first step? How to go out from the fear zone, from the red zone?
Yeah.
What was your coping mechanism?
Mine was just avoidance. I think that's the biggest coping mechanism. Like if I deal with it and deal with the things and the trauma happening at home, and then I go to work, and then I can just kind of forget about that for a while. And it was just kind of avoidance for me.
What was your tipping point? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. I do remember. My tipping point was my wife was getting better. She had been to a hospital, right? We were getting help for her. Life was still really chaotic. And in the process, right, of moving across, because this is like, through everything, we moved across the country in the middle of all this, right? So we moved 2,000 miles away from home, away from our support system, like all of that. So as I look back at it, there was a boiling point, right? And you're saying the tipping point, what is that? So we have a dog. We still have him. He's a pit bull, who we've had for 13 years. While we're out there, I'm like, hey, what would make I look at this and I just kind of laugh now, but I'm like, what would make life even better is if we rescued a dog too. Right. So let's add more on top of this. Right. And I look back and it's important because this dog we found, she was the best dog. Like she was a pit bull, something mix. Right. But it's just beautiful, just super lovely, just like really kind of completed our home for us.
And probably compassionate.
Yes. Just just so compassionate, loved everybody, like was everybody's best friend. And my tipping point was we rescued her. We had her for 2.5 years, and she got cancer and died at the age of 5.
Fuck it, man! You had some bad luck in your life.
just a little bit, right? And for me, that was a tipping point. I look back at it now, and I'm like, that absolutely crushed me. I'm like, here I am this whole time trying to make life work for me, financially, trying to help my wife stay on this planet, right? Because she was very suicidal through all of this. This dog who was just loving, and we still have our other one, but just kind of like it made our little family. And then she dies, and she was my best bud, and like I lost it at that point. Like I totally fell apart. And went through counseling and just kind of some old stuff, but looked at my own life, and there was a lot of stuff like, I was telling you before, my coping mechanism was like avoidance, just like forget about it. And there had been a lot of things in my life that I had been doing that. And so it was kind of the beginning of a wonderful journey for me and to where I'm at today, 12 years later.
So bad stuff were the basis of good stuff after some while.
Yeah. So, all that happened. I guess on top of that, just diving into more of the bad stuff, the talk of divorce between my wife and myself. And then after that point, it's kind of like the end, the rock bottom. It's like, where can we go from here? And it's really just, I think the light at the end of the tunnel, the good stuff that started happening was me choosing back into me and figuring out what I need to do to be a happy person.
What a relief.
Yeah.
Finally being by yourself.
What's that?
Finally being by yourself.
Correct. Just like understanding, who Joe is and how does Joe tick and what opinions do I have, and, feeling free to express them. I've been very quiet most of my life, and, and there's lots of childhood trauma and things like that on top of it, right? Of feeling how I had to present myself in the world. And it was kind of one of the first times in my life where I could be like, oh, hey, I can present myself in a different light, right? And as I started that's looking back at all that is when I actually started creating, the framework by which I teach now on money, right? And looking back at my journey about money through this crisis in my life, and how through even as real horrible it was, that I always continued to make more money through the process. Like I was making more money at the end of all this than I had started out making, like in a corporate job. And then as I started to do kind of that personal development and self-discovery of myself.
Excuse me, isn't that a little bit weird? Having so much troubles and at the same time being able to make money? Why do you think that was possible?
I know now, I like you phrasing it that way. Nobody's ever asked me that question. I guess I've never thought of it that way either. And I look back at that, and it's just my relationship with money, right? I had to get very good at understanding what my relationship with money was through all this process, because everything for the first time in my adult life was on my shoulders to make sure that I survived. And it's kind of like, how all of us have, you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That primal need of survival is like the basis of what everybody's looking for. And the thing is, we go there so often with money, and we never really pass that tier, right? Because money helps us survive. If we don't have money, we can't pay our mortgage, we can't pay our rent, we can't buy food. So all these things were pushing on me. So I had to continue to make more to really survive. Part of that was when we moved across the country, where we moved to, the cost of living was like 3 times more expensive. I got a big raise, but we were also planning my wife working out there, and it wasn't going to happen, right? So all of a sudden we're there, no support system, and you got to pay your bills. And so how do you survive and get my wife the mental health helps that she needed, and all that. Like, so it was just like this big whirlwind of craziness. But looking back at it, kind of calming myself and just being, what do we have to do? And I did that every day, right? What do I have to do to make tomorrow better than today?
This little world we're visiting is just a temporary home for every soul he's living in. It's time to break every chain. We are forgiven. Heaven only knows.
How deep is your connection with money?
It's really deep. I understand it.
I mean, money is just expression.
More.
It's abstract term. You know, we can say, how deep is your connection with wealth or abundance, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people's, money, wealth, abundance. And I think what a lot of people miss is when they start looking at that and, hey, what is your relationship with, wealth, abundance, and money? What it really is at the end of the day is just a mirror that reflects back you. So what is your connection with yourself? And as you increase that connection with yourself and understand yourself more, then the outside resources of relationships, right? Because at the end of the day, business is all about relationships, right? Who we know, who can help us, finding clients and building those relationships. And if we can do that with money and wealth the same way, but really, use it as a mirror to have a better relationship with ourselves, then that relationship can be infinitely good.
If I understood you well, it's not about having money and losing myself, but having myself and having money at the same time. Can you go a little bit deeper? I'm egocentric at the moment, so I want to know more because of me, myself, and I. The old-fashioned way of thinking is, if you want a bunch of money, you will lose yourself. You need to lose yourself and your loved ones and your life and blah, blah, blah. But your way of thinking and your philosophy is a little bit different.
Yeah, it's actually a complete 180 of that. Right? I don't think we don't have to lose ourselves. I mean, what you just talked a little bit, and it kind of made me laugh because I tell all my clients when they're with me, they can be selfish. Right? Because my coaching I do and what I do with money is all about the person, 100% of the time. Because what happens is nobody, I don't know, my own bringing up and talking with people, like nobody taught us really how to connect with ourselves, like on an emotional level. I grew up in the 80s, right? And nobody it's just, I was pretty much a latchkey kid, right? My parents went to work in the summertime and we'd go outside and play, and then would come in before the lights, went on the streets. Like we were never home.
By the way, did you have the long hair in the 80s?
I didn't. It was a little bit longer,
okay.
but not.
Okay, please continue.
Sorry. In fact, my dad always shaved it off in the summertime just because it was easier to deal with, right?
Clever guy.
I'm breathing, I'm releasing. The tears begin to fall as I bury my eyes.
Nobody taught me how to express myself. I mean, I even look back and my parents, I've dealt with a lot of anger in my entire life because my mom, I remember so many moments of my childhood with like such vividity, and other moments I don't, right? But I remember this time my mom looked at me and said, you can't be angry anymore. So I'm like, okay, in my brain, because I think very logically most of the time, I'm like, okay, that means I can't ever express anger again. And I'm like, that's just mind blowing to me because, anger is just an emotion, right? If we understand what to do with our emotions, then we can have a better relationship with ourselves. And as we understand ourselves more, then the world around us starts to make more sense, right? And that's how money kind of comes in. If we can understand ourselves more, if we can work on ourselves, right? On what do we want to grow in our businesses? What kind of boundaries do we want to have? Because that's another thing people don't ever, parents always teach children share everything, right? And pretty soon then we're wondering why adults don't have boundaries. It's like because they were never taught boundaries as children. So, having boundaries, having confidence in ourselves, right? Just understanding what is that big vision and impact we want to make. And if we focus on that for ourselves, then we're going to go out and find the relationships that are going to help us bring in the resources we're looking for. And that's really what money does, right? It's just, again, like this big mirror back in our face. And the problem is we'd like to hide it. We don't want to deal with it because it does reflect back to us. And I think at a subconscious level, everybody realizes that. And so they want to hide money, right? It's in your bank account. You don't keep it with you. I mean, people aren't going to see this, but I keep a stack of $10,000 sitting on my desk right here by me, right? It's a reminder to me to be like, hey, like, how you doing? You're a friend. I want to have a relationship with you. And as I do that, then I understand myself at a deeper level every day. And if I can understand what's happening in this space right here, then I can start to understand other people and help them also discover themselves. And as they do that, then they have more meaningful, deep relationships with other people, including themselves.
go deeper into driving force?
I give to all my clients, hey, get money on your desk and journal, ask it questions, like talk to it. Because here's what, on the other side, the adverse side of that is we have experiences and stories that we have built into us, right? From childhood, from adulthood, we did something and it was kind of cause and effect style, right? We live our lives by these stories and experiences. Money's no different. So we had some experience in life that, has us acting or interacting with money in a certain way. Now, it's not always cut and dry to say, hey, if you go ask, 5 people to buy your product, they're all going to say no because of, some past experience and how you're showing up with money. It's not that cut and dry, but it still influences the way we talk, how confident we are, how we approach ourselves, as we approach our sales conversations, as we decide to put our products out online. Right. So all these driving factors behind like our interactions and how we perceive our truth to be. And that's an important piece, right? Because when you look at, there are some universal truths, but really the way I think about how something should be is going to be different than you, right? Based upon our different experiences and our perceptions and our life experiences. If we can start to break down those walls and be like, money's not the thing that did that to you. Somebody else had that bad experience, right? It's going to start to remove the doubt and fear from the actions we take. And if we can remove the doubt and fear from actions we take, then we become unstoppable. And whatever that big vision is we have, right? Whatever that driving force is that we have in our lives and why we're in business and why we're out there, doing what we do every day, it becomes easier to do that. We have more confidence. And when we show up, people start to respond to that. And I think at the end of the day, we build such a trust within ourselves that we know when we say we're going to do something, we do it. Instead of letting, again, that doubt and fear kind of prevent us from going 100% into what we want to do.
What was your transformation during your journey?
I think one of the pivotal points, I'm 42 now. And when this kind of journey started, with the whole PTSD with my wife and all that, I was 30. So this happened, then. So that was kind of the pivotal point, went through all that craziness. And I didn't even know at this point in time, I just through all of that, I had continued to make more money at my job. And I would get comments from my bosses that be like, hey, we don't usually give these bonuses to people, but we feel like you've earned it this year, right? I was a hard worker too, but I was getting bonuses bigger than I was supposed to. There was one year where I was almost fired at my mid-year review. And by the end of the year, I got the biggest bonus in my department. Was taking care of her, but I was working hard, right? And then it after kind of that pinnacle moment of something's got to change. That's when we decided to move back closer to our family. I worked out a deal with my corporate work that I was doing with it. I just work remotely, right? So we could be closer to family. It was better for her mental health to have a better support system, all that fun stuff. And here's where kind of things shifted in the mode for myself, right? Because I had been doing this money stuff, but I didn't recognize it at the time. And we moved back, and there was a seminar that my wife's aunt invited her to go to. It was kind of like a couples seminar. We had just moved back. I'd used some vacation. I'm like, I don't need to work on myself. So I was like, I don't need that. But I tell my wife that I'm just like, oh, I don't have time off, right? I kind of feigned that I don't have time off. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go to it. So it was a 3-day deal. She goes to it. She's like, oh my gosh, this is mind blowing what the guy was teaching. And he's a personal development coach here in my local area. And so she signed us up to go again in the springtime. And so we plan out this whole thing, and it's kind of a little retreat. So it's about an hour away from where we live. We got a hotel room and all that. And I remember vividly, I'm like, I didn't really want to go. I felt like we were in a good place. But I didn't feel like I didn't want to go. And that morning I almost feigned sick, even though we had spent $500 to go to this thing. But I'm just like, fine. It's kind of that, again, back to my old way of operating, just I'm going to avoid things, right? So I was just avoiding it. I was kind of that silent resistance. And I get there. And so I finally agree to go, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And so I'm sitting there, and there's 300 people in the audience, right? And he hops up, and it's any of these personal development guys, right? It's all hype and all craziness at the front. And I'm like, man, what am I doing here? I remember thinking, I'm like, I had a pad of paper to take some notes. And I'm like, I don't know, what am I doing here? And then I thought in my brain, I remember this too. I'm like, I'm a smart guy. So I'm like, I took 3 days of vacation, paid time off to be here. That means, I know how much money I make per hour. If I do nothing, if I learn nothing, then I'm going to be wasting money and time off. So I might as well like listen and just kind of, get something out of this weekend. So I kind of let my heart soften a bit and just like, what can I learn to help make myself a better person here? And we left there spending like close to 10 grand on services from him. And that kind of started like this whole journey into real looking more at myself and then seeing how what I had done was really a reflection and had started me on this path yet, but I didn't know it. So it was really transformational for me at that point in time. And I remember back in the beginning, kind of as I started the shift is, if somebody else can do it, why can't I? Right. And that really started driving the questions of why, what's preventing me? Because there's one point in time I remember, seeing people on stage and I'm like, I want to speak on stage. I want to speak to people. Like I have these ideas I want to share, which has been like the first time in my life, right? This time I was like 35. And it really started that process for me of figuring out, why can't I? If somebody else can, why can't I? I'm a smart guy. Now, maybe if, I'm not going to send rockets into space, right? That's not my path. But if people can get up and speak on stage about their thoughts, why can't I? Right. And it started this whole inward journey of myself to figure out what's really going on, what's making Joe tick, and do I like it or not? Right. And that's when I start shedding the behaviors and thoughts that I no longer served me for the direction I wanted to go. Right. And started, putting in morning routines and journaling exercises and, things like that to help me start reforming the way my brain thinks. And, where I said before I couldn't, that now I say I can, and I'm going to figure out how I can. So it created a lot of drive in me just to continue forward and really start the transform my life.
Open your eyes wide, open your mind. It's a beautiful day, it's a beautiful life. There's a reason you're here, you got something to prove. You got love in your heart and you got nothing to lose. So hold on, you give love and it comes right back to you. Listen man, hold on, no one said that this was gonna be easy. Don't fight me.
What's your daily routine?
I get up in the mornings. I do some personal affirmations that I've created myself. So about every 12 weeks, I go through and I'll create like a new set of like 5. I'll sit down and I'll do an exercise, what I call like write and burn. So I sit down and take out a piece of paper and I just like write out all the garbage that, tells me that I can't. And then I'll either rip it up or I'll literally put it like in a can and burn it. And then I sit down and I journal to money. And I said, like ask money, say, hey money, like what are we going to do today? Like, where are your friends at? Like I just have some different prompts I use and then just journal about that. And then I've recently added in, some exercise. I want to start working on fitness for my body. So been working on my mind and the fitness there and the body needs to catch up now. But that's really my morning routine. And for the most part, stay pretty close to doing that every morning. And, there's some, depending on how I'm feeling, sometimes there's some meditation as well in there, but it really helps, right? Helps center my brain and what am I really trying to accomplish for the day and allowing myself and those inner truths to come out and allow me to, just act upon kind of the intuition that I have.
Are you a one-man band or do you have any kind of organizations, VAs, JVs, peer-to-peer?
Some peer-to-peer, and then I have some VAs that work, and we have a small team. So I run my business. My wife runs a business that does more intuitive coaching. And then we have a team that works for both of us. So yeah, I couldn't do this alone. It's
How many hours are you working per day on a daily basis?
Yeah, on average, I bet we work. Well, I look at like what we worked last year, right? As we sat down and looked and say what was our revenue last year, and how much did we work? And we worked a little less than part-time. What the corporate world would say, the normal in the US is 40 hours. We worked probably on average between 16, maybe 20 hours a week. So we don't kill ourselves. I mean, obviously some days are, we're going to work 12-hour days, but then we're going to take, 3 days off. So our goal for our business life, and I think is important for all entrepreneurs, is really to integrate it in a way that work when you need to and take time off when you need to. Like personal care is so important to me.
Right. Run as fast as you can. Got the world on your shoulders and a torch in your hand. Like the way for humankind, it's all a state of mind. See it in your eyes, leave no one here behind. Hold on, you give love and it comes right.
Yeah, personal care is really important to me, right? Because if you don't take care of yourself, then your business is going to suffer, right? If you are your business, there's nothing more important than really taking care of you, both mentally, physically, spiritually, so you can continue on. So I don't think you have to work, 60-hour weeks. I think you can accomplish a lot of what you want to do
Oh, absolutely.
in a lot less time.
You are still with your wife, or you are?
Yes. So so part of that journey, right? If you want to add in, we talked about divorce, right? We really contemplated it. Are our lives going in the same direction? And that was important too, because it was a question for both of us, and we both chose back in, right? And I think that's the part that's so important, right? With anything that we do, like our choice is so important to our own, like, destinies, like what we want to do. And we chose back in. Yeah. So we, 2021, this will be our 20th year anniversary this year.
Congrats.
In June. So yeah, we've been through a lot together, and we continue to choose back in every day. And as we do that, then we have a wonderful marriage. We do business kind of together, and help each other out. And it's been a wonderful journey thus far, and to hopefully 40, 50 more years.
Sugar, take me to that place that you love so much. Sweetie, give me that supersonic bubble rush.
I've placed myself as a very grounded person, generally more an optimist, right? I look at the possibilities of what can be, and I try to see the good in people, which has been a big shift for me. I was kind of very pessimistic for a long time, a little more depressed, but looking back at even that time, I'm like, because I wasn't really doing what I wanted to do. I was doing what I was good at, which paid the bills, but it didn't, there wasn't the fulfillment that I find now in what I do in the life I have. But yeah, I think that, those would probably be the words I would use to describe myself as where I'm at right now.
What pieces are still missing?
Yeah. And I look at that and ask myself that all the time, like, what else do I still need? And like I say, this year is definitely a year that both my wife and I are working on our physical health, right? Because our mental health we've been working on for a long time now. But I think that's the piece I'm missing. I think that's the piece to help me along. I do some activity, like I play ice hockey, and I find it a lot of fun, but that's about the extent of my exercise. So adding some of that in, right? Kind of looking at my body as a whole to be like, hey, my head is in a really good place. My body needs to catch up now. And so for this year, that's really the focus for myself, right? To continue to build the business, continue to work on the mindset and the theory I have, but also add in some of that physical movement, to help kind of with the stuck energy in my body to help release it and, release some weight as well.
Candy canes and chocolate, bubble gum and cheesy chips, lovely feel, lollipops. I just don't want it to stop. Don't want it to stop.
How to get starting today? I want more money. I want more peace in my life. I want more freedom. So Joe, please help me.
And I think, Martin, this is the mind-blowing thing that I think that even a hallway conversation can resolve, right? And that's, the number one tool I give anybody, even just in passing, is get some cash. Like, not just have like money in the bank, but actually get some physical cash to put on your desk and start journaling to it every day. Ask it questions, get to know it. And it's pretty amazing what people start to discover about themselves, about money, how they think about it. Because part of the personal development journey is just understanding what we need to work on. A lot of us are a little tone deaf. I know I have been for a lot of my life, like tone deaf to what's actually happening around us. So if we can quiet our time and take like even 10 minutes a day and just sit down in kind of a morning routine and just like talk to your cash, see what it has to say, just write, be non-prejudiced about what you're like hearing, right? Not like physically hearing from your cash, but what's the thoughts running through your head. And as you do that, you're going to find what those next steps are for building a relationship with money, building a relationship with yourself, and what you can start taking action on tomorrow. So that would be my number one thing to like have people do. Like people don't have enough cash in their lives. And if they can get some and start talking to it, life will be different tomorrow. Like I said earlier in the episode, right? I have an actual stack of $10,000 that sits on my desk. Now it doesn't have to be that much, right? It can literally be like a single bill, but just put it on your desk and literally like, again, it might feel a little weird to like actually speak out loud to it, but I would encourage you to speak out loud to it. Say, hey, money, where are you at? Hey, money, how are you doing today? But have a pen and a piece of paper, right? And just start writing down whatever comes back to you, those thoughts that come through. So it's a little bit abstract of like the answers are going to come from within, but if we ask the question externally, what happens is we start having a more full body experience with this journaling exercise. I believe in full body experiences, meaning that we're using more than one of our senses to have an interaction, right? We're looking at the money. So we're using sight, we're talking to it. So not only are we speaking, but then we're also listening to our own voice. And as we do that, it slows our mind down. It slows our heart down in a way that then we can start to listen to ourselves. Most of the time we think about things, or when we journal, or when we're starting to have, kind of theoretical discussions with ourselves, we all do it just inside of our brains. And our brains process information so fast that we miss the details sometimes. So if we can speak it, and then we got to write it down so it even slows it down even more, then we can really start to let that sink in what we need to do.
What kind of state of mind do I need? Are there any prerequisites for communicating with money?
I would say first, no, don't overcomplicate it. Just sit down and do it. Whatever, don't be prejudiced about what you write on the paper, just write it. It could be that you hate money and that money's not your friend. Cool. That's a starting point, right? Most of us don't know where we're starting from. So it's hard to say, hey, here's the next best tool for you, because you don't even know where you're at. So we're just kind of like creating a little GPS for like, where are we at? What's the weather check on this? I don't know how I feel. Cool, write it down. And tomorrow you may feel different. But yeah, like until you know, then it's really hard to start.
So are we talking about some kind of awareness through the time?
There'll definitely be awareness that happens. And I think awareness is the first key to transformation, right? If we can understand where we're at, understand what's going on, then we can go take action on it. The other piece of that framework is, sometimes we need some accountability. That's why we hire business coaches and mindset coaches and other people, right? So we can have people accountable to us. But if we can be aware, we can go take action and try to change that and be accountable, because we need that as human beings, right? To say, hey, I need to tell you I did this or didn't do it, right? It drives us a little different. Then we can find the transformation we're looking for.
And acceptance as a second step. So I accept my situation at the moment. I accept my blockage I have regarding money or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I can create new value.
Yeah. I think that's thanks for calling that out, because I think that's important. Because if we can accept it as we are, not without prejudice against ourselves, right? Because when we start beating up on ourselves because we haven't done something right, or we weren't aware of something, it doesn't promote change, right? It doesn't promote healthy lifestyle within ourselves. If we can accept it, be like, cool, this is where I'm at. This is a good starting point. Cool. Now I'm going to go do something different, right? And take that next step, and whatever comes out, and start taking action. Some action is going to be better than no action. Yeah, the emotion side, it's taken a long time. Like I used to be like super cut off from my emotions. But yeah, everything that's happened in life is definitely pushed me in the direction of at least dealing with them and processing them and understanding, really what's ticking on the inside, and trying to, change that, and then watch the outside world change at the same time. One of my favorite money books that I've read is called The Little Money Bible by Stuart Wilde. Stuart Wilde, if you don't know about him, he's a kind of a new age thinker. He's since passed away. But I like the kind of down to earth philosophy that he took when talking about money and what he's placed out there. Right? He talked about the physical effects about money and then shared stories. He talked about the kind of spiritual and then metaphysical kind of, he wrapped it all up. And he kind of got a little far out there for me. But I think it was the first time in my life where I'm like, as I was reading a book, I'm going to take what really resonates with me and everything else I'm just going to not worry about, right? Because there were some things about him creating little shrines in his house. I'm like, I'm not going to go that far. But some of the concepts and things that he was teaching about just a different way to interact with money was quite, when I read it, it was just like mind blowing. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about I could interact with money that way. So for anybody, that wants a good book to read, and it's really a short read. It's like maybe 120 pages or something like that. It's pretty short, but really good, really, really good.
Where can people find you, Joe?
So
your wisdom.
For me, my wisdom. So I'm changing how I'm doing it. I used to have as any business, a lead magnet to send people to called Attitudes of Money, which is still out there. But really, if you go to my website, it's www.josephmburns.com. You can find everything. You can find Attitudes of Money on there. What I'm really excited about is the last year I spent creating a lot of content for YouTube, and that's all going to be released. And my attitude is I want to give back to people who are following me. So there's going to be a bunch of free content on there talking about, hey, what can you do about the different attitudes of money? And it's all going to be all free, not be paywalled or anything behind that. So you can go. And then if you want to follow me more, there's a newsletter and fun stuff like that on my website.
Thanks, Joe. I hope your wife and you and your loved ones and your business will prosper and everything will be fine.
Thanks, Martin. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you having me on your show. This has been a lot of fun.
'21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Subscribe to us as you leave a positive review on iTunes.